Thank you so much for being here. It's amazing that a little country church on the side of the road just a few years ago had 17 elderly people sitting here. There was not enough people here to fill the front row of this choir loft. And to see the building overflowed, we've got our balcony done now. We could put another 50, 60 people up in the balcony. It's just been a great miracle of God to see Him save many of you, put your lives back together, and bring you to a church that right now is broadcasting to untold millions across the world from the side of the road. Let's make them welcome. We just signed on the air, television, Facebook, internet, live stream, church app, radio stations around the world. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm reading from Genesis chapter number 32, and I'd like to begin reading with verse number 21. So went the present over before him. Jacob had sent presents to his brother Esau. That's what that's referring to. And himself lodged that night in the company, or with the band that Jacob was traveling with. And he arose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and he sent them over the brook and sent over that all that he had. He sent everything with his family and said, get on the other side of the water. And Jacob was left alone. And there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And the man he was wrestling with said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And Jacob, and he said, I'll not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, my name's Jacob. And this man that he'd wrestled with all night long, he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob. Forget that. From now on, your name's Israel. For a prince, as a prince has thou power with God and with men, and has prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And he passed over Peniel. The sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. Thank you so much for reading the scripture with me. That'll be all I read for sake of time. I want to give you the setting of the story here. I'm preaching on the journey from becoming a Jacob to an Israel. The journey or the process that God will use to change your name, your nature, and He even changed his nationality. When you read this story, you understand what has happened here. Jacob was a twin. He was born with his brother Esau from Isaac and Rebekah. Esau was the first one being delivered from his mother, and Jacob wanted to be the firstborn. The word Jacob means to be held by the heel. And the Bible said when Esau was born that Jacob was so determined to be first that he literally had a hold of his foot trying to jerk him back in. So they're Baptists fighting, and they're not even out of their mother's womb yet. And so Jacob tries to grab his brother by the foot and pull him back in so he could be first. The word Jacob means a heel holder, a supplanter, a crook, a trickster. It means to be sneaky. It means to be a liar, to have no confidence in. It means to be one thing one day and another thing another. And I guess it means he's a presidential candidate for the United States of America, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you remember Isaac gets old now. Jacob and Esau have grown. Isaac gets old and he loses his eyesight. He's getting ready to die, and he knows it's time for him to bless the firstborn. The firstborn had the blessings of the father, the inheritance of the family. But Esau was first, but you remember Jacob pulled him in by the heel. So Jacob gets with his mother Rebekah, and the Bible said that they put hair and fur on him because the word Esau means to be hairy. It means to be rough. It means to be tough. Jacob was smooth skin, and Esau was rough. He was a hunter. He was mean. You know, God never says anything good about a hunter. You deer hunters, look up here. Every hunter in the Bible was wicked. It's amazing to me. And so Jacob's mother helped him put on some fake skin and sheep's wool and everything. And he went before Isaac and he knelt down and he said, Daddy, this is Esau. Please, you're getting ready to die. Put your birthright on me. And Isaac reached forward, Brother Collins being blind, and he felt Jacob. He said, you sound like Jacob, but you feel like Esau. And he said, Daddy, please put the birthright on me. And Isaac, blind, not knowing what he was doing, accidentally put the birthright on Jacob instead of Esau. So now Esau's out hunting, and Jacob is not a hunter, he's a cook. And so he's cooking a pot of beans out in the field. Esau's been hunting all day. He didn't kill anything. He starved to death. He comes across the field, and Jacob said, look, it looks like you're ready to die. He said, I'm starving to death. Jacob said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a bowl of beans for your birthright. Jacob said, I'm getting ready to famish and die. What good's my birthright? You can have it. Give me those beans. And on 2 occasions, Jacob tricked his dad and tricked his brother and stole his birthright as being the firstborn. And boy, Esau being rough and tough and hairy and a hunter and mean and aggressive, he was enraged when he got home and found out that Isaac had blessed his brother instead of him. And he said, no, my father, this cannot be. And Isaac said, what is done is done. And Esau rose up and went out through the colony and said, the moment I find my brother Jacob will be the moment that Jacob dies. Now, Jacob's not a fighter. He's a crook. And most crooks are cowards. So Jacob decides he better get his tail out of town before the sun goes down. And Jacob runs from God and from his family for 20 years. He never sees him. He never hears from him. But God begins to deal with Jacob about getting right and demands that he return back home. But in that 20-year period of time, his brother Esau has started his own family, his own colony. They were called Edomites. They were descendants of Esau. And Jacob knew in order to get back to God and get back home again, he had to pass through Edom, which is where Esau was living. Jacob said, if I go to, I'll never make it back home. Esau, 20 years ago, vowed to kill me. You know, I've learned a long time ago, you don't get right with God until you're willing to face what you screwed up. You got to face what you've screwed up. So Jacob's been gone for 20 years, and he's coming back, and he's getting close to Edom, so he starts sending, and Jacob's got 2 wives, and he's got 11 sons, and he starts sending presents ahead of time to Esau. And Esau sends word back that we're going to set up a time and a place, and I want to meet you, Jacob, one-on-one. So this is the night before. This is where my story picks up our text. This is the night before Jacob is to meet Esau the next day. Jacob doesn't know it, but God is about to change him. He's going to put him through something that he had no earthly idea he was going to go through. And he didn't even understand it, but all the time God had a purpose and plan to change him. There will be times in your life when God will put you through stuff you don't understand. God don't have to explain himself to us. But in the long term, what God is doing is to make us better. He's trying to take the Jacob out of us, the sneakiness out of us, the fleshly stuff out of us, and he's trying to make us, Israel means a prince with God. That means a standing with God. So when God lets something happen in your life that you don't understand, don't fall all to pieces, go crazy, start smoking pot, popping pills and getting drunk. Just go to bed and say, I don't understand what's going on, but I'll tell you one thing, God's going to change me, and when this is over, I'll be better than I've ever been in my life. So Jacob says, I don't want my family to get killed. For 20 years it's been ringing in my head, Esau's going to kill me. So he takes his family and all of his kids, and the Bible said they crossed the ford. It was a ford he used to travel his family. If it had been a Chevrolet, they'd have broke down and had to have jumper cables, and God only knows what would have happened. I'm not against Chevrolets. We used to have them till we got a job. I'm not against them. So I want to give you 3 points quickly. I want you to look at Jacob's unsafe surroundings. You ever been out in the woods by yourself? That's a freaky thing. Especially woods you hadn't been in 20 years. Jacob's family's gone, his protection's gone, his sheep, his oxen, his asses, all of his kids, all of his servants, everybody's gone. And he's setting out at night. The Bible said that it was getting dusk dark when he sent his family away. And Jacob by himself sets down in an unsafe surrounding. There were three things that, could I say, consumed Jacob at this time. I've been out in the woods before. I know what it's like. And I ain't going back out there no more. You say, the woods won't hurt you, no, but it'll make you hurt yourself. The sun goes down, I'm going to mama. You don't fool around all you want to. Too many ghosts and goblins out there for me. There's three things God put Jacob through to get him to the place where he could change him. Number one, the Bible said, and he was alone. There's something about being all alone. Right as the nightfall was coming, the sun was going down, everybody's gone, no kids are crying, no dishes clanging, no servants sharpening the swords, no animals bleating in the background. For the first time, it's total silence and darkness. And Jacob is all alone. Have you ever been through something where you were surrounded by people, but yet you felt you were all by yourself? I remember in the ministry years ago, God allowed me to go through something that I did not like or appreciate until it was over with. And I remember my wife and I were sitting in a building that night, and there were probably 1,800 people there. And they all came to hear me preach. 1,800 people. I'm sitting on the front with my wife. I was the visiting preacher that night, and I looked at her and I said, you may not understand this, but I feel like running out that side door and never looking back. There's times you can feel alone in a crowd. Some of you may feel alone right now in a packed auditorium. And God's putting you through something where you feel like you're not connecting with anybody. And we start worrying and fretting, what's wrong? Are we in the wrong place? Have we done something wrong? Is there something we need to change? I'm not used to this kind of atmosphere. Relax. God's got you alone for a purpose. But you see, he's not only alone, he's afraid. Has God ever put you somewhere where you were afraid? Now, I don't know, out in the woods at night, they didn't have shotguns and high-powered rifles and Uzis and machine guns like some men sitting here do that have them on them right now. But can you imagine sitting out in the woods, everybody's gone, and all of a sudden the night creatures start coming out. The wolves start yelling. You start hearing crackling through the leaves. Then your mind starts playing games. You see stuff running between the trees that really ain't there. So God's not only got you in a place where you're all alone, God's got you in a place that you're scared of. You ever been scared of life? Have you ever woke up in the morning and rolled over and said, can I just put my pillow over my head and life go away for a little while? Because you're afraid of what the day will bring forth. Every time the phone rings, your stomach ties up in a knot because you're asking, I wonder what's wrong with who now? And God's got him in an unsafe surrounding, and he's alone and he's afraid. And by the way, he's aware of one thing. There's a red-headed, double-jointed brother coming after his tail. I can imagine Jacob builds a fire out in the middle of the woods. He's sitting there, and while he builds the fire, the red flames start coming out of the wood, going up in the air. And all he could think about was that red-haired brother. I'll kill you. If I ever get my hands on you, I'll kill you. And now it's set up for them to meet that morning. You know, your mind gets to playing games. Every time you heard a leaf fall from a tree, every time he maybe heard an animal go across the woods, I can imagine he would jump up and say, is that Esau? Is that? Have you ever been to a place where you feel alone and you're afraid and then you get paranoid about stuff that's not even real? The devil will get to playing with your mind and get you to worry about stuff that doesn't even happen. Did you know 8 out of things you worry about never happen? That ticks me off. Because if I'm going to take time to worry about it, the least it could do is happen in my life. So now you're worrying about stuff that doesn't even happen. You're living in a world that's not even real. And you feel alone though you're all around people. And you're afraid to face the day. And there's Jacob wondering, what in the world would God put me in a circumstance like this? I'm trying to get to God. I'm trying to get back home. I'm trying to get it right. God said, oh no. You got to be alone. You got to be afraid. You got to be aware somebody's after you. That's his unsafe surroundings. But watch this. I want you to notice his unexpected situation or struggle. He's sitting there, Brother Randy. He's looking at that fire, that red fire. That's the hair of Esau. And all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, he gets tackled from behind. Now, brother, if you want business to pick up quick, you just tackle me from behind. He knows it ain't his family. He knows it ain't his servants. There's only one person in his mind that would be out in the middle of the woods and know where he's at in the middle of the night. It's Esau. I want you to notice the tackle. He doesn't go up to Jacob and say, hey, stand up, let's fight, let's dig. Jacob's relaxed, he's afraid, he's kind of alone, and all of a sudden from out of nowhere, he gets tackled with something that he's not expecting. Have you ever woke up one day and the sun's shining, but before the sun went down, your life was in array? You ever been hit by something you wasn't expecting? A loss of a job, a family problem, a child go bad, emotional stress, bad news from the doctor? You think God's setting you up to bless you, but is this really a blessing? You're letting me get hurt by somebody I can't even see. It's dark outside. I don't have a flashlight. I don't have gloves. I don't have a gun. I don't have anything. And all of a sudden, I get hit with something I wasn't even expecting to happen in my life. He not only got tackled, notice the timing in verse 24. Here's what the Bible said. They fought all night. Sounds like some of you married couples. Fought all right. It wasn't just the fact that God allowed him to get hit by something that was unexpected. God made him fight it all night long. It's one thing for a situation to come that we wasn't really looking for, but it's another thing when God lets something come and he makes it stay in our life for a long time. Don't you know, in the middle of the night, Jacob got to thinking, is this dude ever going to let me go? Is God ever going to hear my cry? Now, nowhere in the Bible does it say Jacob prayed, but I got news for you, bless God Almighty. You got me out in the woods in the middle of the night by myself, and some dude grabbed me from behind. I promise you this preacher's praying, whether it's recorded or not. And he's hurting over something he didn't expect. But God's trying to change him, and he don't know it. And he's fighting, and halfway through the night, no doubt, he said, God, would you just take it from me? It'll be a glad day in our Christian lives when we quit asking for deliverance and start praying for development. So the timing is he fights it all night long. Then there's a touch in verse 25. It's one thing to pull hair, get punched, beat each other, kick each other, bite on each other, pull each other around. And then the Bible said in verse 25 that this man hit the hollow of his thigh in his hip. And similarly, you're here recovering from hip. You know the pain. So it moves from being a problem to being painful. His situation is not getting worse. It's getting better. It's getting worse. Have you ever felt alone fighting stuff you wasn't expected? You pray about it, and instead of it getting better, God lets it get worse. And he's fighting and he's struggling and he's thinking, why don't God just let this go away? And the man he's wrestling with said, let me go. Jacob said, brother. I put up with your nonsense all night. I ain't letting go. And that man smote him in his hip and busted his thigh. And it was such a hard hit that the muscle of the thigh shrunk up in his leg. It was dislocated for the rest of his life. Would you let God hurt you for the rest of your life if it would get you to be in Israel? And Jacob said, oh, that hurt. And the man said, now you'll let me go. He said, I'm not letting go of anything. Verse 26, there's a turning point. That man said, look, I have fought you all night. I'm not Esau. The sun's starting to come up. I've hit you in the hollow of the thigh. You're going to be crippled the rest of your life. Let me go. Now watch this. When they first started fighting, no doubt Jacob tried to get away. But through God and patience and development and maturity, instead of Jacob running from what's hurting him now, he's holding it. Instead of Jacob saying, good, I'm glad you want to go, leave, Jacob grabs it and said, you're not going anywhere. The guy said, the sun's getting ready to break, I've got to go. Jacob said, you're not going anywhere till you bless me. Now, you've beat me all night long. And I believe that there's a God in heaven that if I'll hang on to what's been beaten up on me, if I won't throw in the towel, if I won't quit, if I won't turn my back, if I will prevail with God, if I will stay with God, if I will wrestle through the night, if I will cry through the night, if I will fight through the night, I believe that there's a God in heaven that'll let the sun shine again. And he blessed him. He blessed him. And he turned around and he said, by the way, what's your name? As if this man didn't know his name. He said, my name's Jacob. The man said, it won't be any more. You're not going to be tricky and crafty and nasty and filthy anymore. You're a prince with God, son. And Jacob said, why would you bless me like this? Are you still with me, Jacob? Why would you give me all of this? And the man turned around and said, I'll tell you why. You prevailed. When you felt like you were alone, you still went to church. When you felt like you were afraid, you still read your Bible. When you felt like the enemy was on you, you still got in your prayer closet. When all hell broke out, you kept walking with God. When your mind played tricks on you, you walked with God. When your body got afflicted, you walked with God. When your family fell apart, you walked with God. When you lost your job, you walked with God. When everybody turned against you, you walked with God. When you had nothing left, you walked with God. And God said, I'll tell you what kind of God I am. If you'll prevail till morning, when the sun comes up, I will bless you. I'll tell you something, I'm not much. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had to apologize a lot of times. But I am what I am right now because I never quit. I walked with him anyhow. When I failed, I got up. When I was weak, I got up. When I was disappointed, I got up. When I didn't feel like it, I got up. And the reason why God's going to bless you, you prevailed. So Jacob, after he blesses him, lets him go. And from that moment till he dies in the book of Hebrews, Jacob's got a partner. It's called a staff. His hip never did go back in joint. That muscle drew up in that empty socket like a paralyzation. Jacob was never able to walk on that leg again the rest of his life. So he comes across the ford the next morning. He's been fighting all night. His wife could hear him over there yelling, ouch! Ow! Quit! She'd see the bushes rumbling. She thought, what's Jacob doing over there? So here comes Jacob the next morning. Every other tooth is missing like a drunk that's hit a picket fence. Both his eyes are black. Blood's pouring out of his nose. His lips are split wide open. His hips out of joint for the rest of his life. Blood all down his robe, wasn't ripped off of him. And his wife come running up to him and said, honey, what happened to you? And he said, God blessed me. God blessed you. You see, people that have never been alone, people that's never been afraid, people that's never been aware that there's an enemy, all they see is our crippled spots. All they see is our black and blue marks. All they see is a bloody nose. But what they don't see is that God showed up and the sun rose up again and God changed our lives. Changed us forever. It's an unexpected struggle. Number 3, and I'm done. I want you to notice Jacob's unforgettable stand. I want to ask you something. I'm done. You know who you're fighting against today? If you'd have stopped Jacob in the middle of the night and said, hey, who are you fighting? He'd say, Esau. It's Esau I'm fighting. when all the time he was fighting God. Be careful how you act when things don't go right. You may be fighting the will of God for your life. But why would God attack him and hurt him and cripple him the rest of his life? I'm going to give you 3 quick reasons and I'm done. Number 1, he wanted him to have a witness in the world. The Bible says in the book of Hebrews that he leaned on the top of his staff. And you understand the dude never walked. They didn't have physical therapy. They couldn't do surgery. So he did this, Brother Durham, the rest of his life. God wanted him to be a witness. Because don't you know everywhere Jacob went, somebody would say, hey, what happened to your leg? I'll tell you what happened to my leg. I met God one night. And he saved me and he changed me and he turned me from a Jacob to an Israel. And God may be putting you through something and it may seem like it's hurting you and it'll never go away. But God will use that very thing to raise you up and let you be a witness. Number 2, God touched him and allowed that to happen so that he would walk straight. Now watch this. Jacob was a young man when this happened. And he lived to be 95. No, 147, excuse me. Jacob lived to be 147. Now watch this. If I took a staff, Brother Anderson, and I made it to fit me when I was 21, you really think I'd be standing that tall when I was 147? Man, I'd be bent over, arthritis, hurting. I'm that way now at 61. I'd be way down here somewhere on that stick. But you know what the Bible says in the book of Hebrews? When Jacob was an old man, he was still standing at the top of his staff. He said, through the years and the valleys and the trials, I never changed my walk. I never dipped my colors. I never caved in. I never got I'm standing at 147 where I stood when I was a 21-year-old man. Oh, God, give us some people. God, give us some people that'll stand just as firm when they're gray-headed as they were when they were black-headed. Walk with God. Number 3, I'm closing. He used that so that he would worship more often. You know what the Bible said in the book of Hebrews when he died? You talking about a weird way to die? I've never heard of anybody dying like this. The Bible said he died standing at the top of his staff worshiping. He's got 12 sons in front of him. And he said, the last thing I want my kids to remember. He said, I never quit being a witness. I'm still standing for God. And I want to leave here with a shout. I want my kids to know God's been good to me. All 12 of my sons, I'm going to tell you, God has been good to me, and God will be good to you. You know why we shout when we come to church? I know some people don't like shouting, and that's all right. There's enough dead churches to take care of you. But I'm going to tell you why we're shouting. We know where we used to be. We know what we were. We know what we are now. We know where we're going when we die. God has been good to us. He's given us our clothes on our back, shoes on our feet, roof over our house, money in our pocket, a car in the parking. Till the day we die, we ought to die worshiping God. So I'm closing with this. Dr. Charles Weigel lived to be 95. When Dr. Weigel was a young evangelist, he lived in Florida. And he came home, and there was a note on the table from his wife. She said, I've left you. I'm not coming back. I have no desire to be a preacher's wife. And Dr. Weigel walked out on the edge of a pier in Florida in the middle of the night and was going to drop off into the foamy waves and drown and commit suicide. I've heard him tell the story 100 times on tape. He died in 1966. He said, I leaned forward on that dock and the foamy waves were beckoning me to come. He said, I've lost my wife, my ministry, my family. He says, I leaned over that dock. The Holy Ghost said, Charles, if you won't jump, I know it's been rough through the night. And you're going to be crippled. She's not coming back home. But I'm going to put my power on you, and I'm going to use you if you won't jump. I'm going to turn your Jacob into an Israel. Just don't jump. Charles Weigel said, I turned around, went back to my house, and sat down at a piano, and in 20 minutes, He wrote the song that he sang all over the world. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. And God spun that man all over the world, singing and preaching, because he didn't let his Jacob take him under. A friend of mine in Chattanooga, Tennessee, was taking care of Dr. Weigel. He was 95 years old. He was staying in a prophet's house on the church grounds there. And he said every morning I'd go by Dr. Weigel's room to check on him. He said he was 95 years old, and he said, I went to go to the door, and I noticed the door had already been open that morning. And he said, I went to push it open, and I heard something, and I thought, whoa. He said, I stood by the door, and I heard something go, hallelujah, glory to God. Woo! He said, I thought, what is that old man doing? Dr. Weigel's 95. He said, I pushed the door open, Brother Kidd, and Dr. Weigel is standing in the middle of his bed, dressed in a suit, jumping up and down in the middle of it, 95 years old. Tears are streaming down his face. And the preacher said, I went to close the door and said, oh God, he's had a stroke. He said, but I couldn't look away. I looked back again and he was going, hallelujah, glory to God. He said, I walked in and I said, Dr. Weigel, are you okay? He said, preacher boy, I was praying before daybreak this morning. And God told me I get to go home today. I'm going to heaven today. I'm so excited that I get to go to heaven today. 95 years old, jumping up and down in the middle of his bed because he's going to heaven that day. He said, I loaded him in my car, took him to the emergency room. I met the nurse, and I said, now, ma'am, I think he's had a stroke. The dude got up, took a shower, put a suit on. He's jumping in the middle of his bed. This guy needs help. They ran a physical on him, said, there ain't anything wrong with him. For his age, he's strong as a horse. He said, I walked in the room and said, Dr. Weigel, I'm going to leave you here. I'll be back to get you later on. And he said, but I want to have prayer with you. He said, don't pray for me. You ain't praying nothing. He said, get out of here. He said, I'm going to heaven today. I didn't want to die in that room because every time you'd go past it, you'd think about finding me there dead. So I want you to bring me to the hospital. He said, I'll tell you something, boy. I'm going to get to see Jesus today. This is the best day of my life. He said, I thought I'll let him calm down and go get him this evening. He said, I wasn't gone an hour till I got a call from the hospital. They'd found Dr. Weigel dead, all alone in his room. And I thought to myself, Brother Collins, if a 95-year-old man in an old beat-up body that's been drug across the face of this earth for almost a century can get up in the middle of the bed and shout over seeing Jesus, can you imagine what it's going to be like when we all get over there in a glorified body, fashioned like unto the Son of God, and we see him that is altogether lovely? You think we're shouting now? You think we're clapping now? You think we're running now? You wait till that day. I want to see him in worship. Let's stand with our heads bowed. Thank you for coming. I want to ask you a question. Has something hit you unexpectedly? Let's stand up. Has something tackled you that you didn't see coming?
These are the days of Elijah, declaring the word of the Lord. And these are the days of your servant Moses, righteousness being restored. And